XCOM 2 released a couple of days ago, and after doing a little more than playing it and streaming it, I feel comfortable in giving my first impressions. I'll begin by saying that this review is spoiler free, no worries about letting you in on some of the nasty surprises that await. Let me be upfront in saying that I was excited for this game. The first Firaxis XCOM and its expansion were games I spent many hours playing and replaying, so the big question is, has this delivered on the promise of its prequel, but better? I've personally played up to the first major story objectives, but I can already see that the game offers a lot more than the first in terms of content. At its heart, to me, XCOM was always a game about stories, by giving you situations and moments that you can regale others with about the time your favourite sniper got torn in half when someone panicked and disturbed a nearby muton pack. XCOM 2 certainly delivers on that. In general, the game feels more fleshed out. Both you and the enemy have more abilities and more to do to each other than just shooting at the other guy. Threats are more varied off the bat. The first game had a gradual curve of getting shot by cowards, shot by enemies with deadly accuracy, and then shot by enemies that occasionally flank. This game introduces melee, psionic attacks, and crowd control incredibly quickly, and learning to deal with those properly as they arise makes things more interesting. For those of you unfamiliar with the game, or three of you, hopefully you can glean what the game is about from what's on the screen. You have a small squad of soldiers against packs of alien foes on a map made from random tile sets. Earth has been conquered and is in the grip of the mysterious Advent organization, who have no clear agenda but are clearly up to no good. It's up to the remnants of what was Earth's only hope to take the fight to Advent and its alien masters in their flying mobile command center, using precision strikes to cripple their dastardly plans. It's a big tonal shift from the first game, where you are a semi-secret organization of Earth's best and brightest, but it suits the game incredibly well. Missions now frequently begin in an infiltration mode where enemies aren't alerted if you spot them, giving you time to set up a lethal first strike and get some easy kills. This help eliminates XCOM 1's slow start to missions, letting you move around with some freedom rather than slowly creeping forward until you meet your first enemy pack. Gameplay is given a big twist, however, with the heavy introduction of timed missions. This controversial feature generally gives you an 8 or 12 turn timer to achieve your objectives, meaning that slow crawl that was moderately effective, but safe in XCOM 1 is no longer fair play. A lot of complaint has been aimed at this feature, and I personally think it's more down to growing pains. People are getting used to the additional pressure. Instead of fighting slow battles and waiting for shots to land, you instead have to constantly consider your objective and occasionally take risks to achieve it. To me, this adds a layer of fun to the game. Sending your hacker through an enemy position to get through the access panel before the timer runs out puts you on the edge of your seat as you potentially risk lives to achieve objectives. And in the end, isn't that what XCOM's about? Of course, sometimes those risks don't pay off. Occasionally, you'll fail missions, and this is where it gets smart in my opinion. In the first game, mission failures resulted in a drastic spike of panic, which was your failure condition. While in XCOM 2, it's often simply a loss of resources and maybe some other smaller penalties. Mission failures are no longer game-breaking, but instead are minor setbacks and hurdles. If I had to guess, the turn timer is mostly upsetting to people who don't like to lose. And for those people, I'd suggest to just try it. Let the game play out. It enriches the game as a whole and helps build up those moments of tension. That being said, what I'd really like is an ability to increase the turn timer in the game, either through early research or through sub-objectives on the map, similar to the bomb missions from the first game where you could use devices around the map to buy yourself more time. I think the ability to make a choice about securing a sub-objective to steal a turn or two would be quite fun. If the timer is really game-breaking for you, of course, you can resort to modding. This is where XCOM 2 gets really impressive to me. The game is laid bare for tweaks and changes. If a feature bothers you, remove it. I've heard several people removing the mission timers, extending them, and even people removing the doom tracker that counts down towards the alien victory, letting you play the game in peace and removing the omnipresent stresses of fighting for the safety of the world. This is only scratching the surface. Expect full overhauls in the future to inject more replayability into an already replayable game. Unfortunately, not everything is perfect. While many of the systems are vastly improved, giving you a huge amount of customization from bullets that set enemies on fire to exosuits that give you new abilities to a plethora of new skills, the game suffers from a lack of polish. My computer is fairly high-end, but it chugs frequently during loading, and any foliage-intensive map tends to suffer some frame dips. My advice is, if you do purchase this game, let it figure out what you can run and then turn a few options down a little more just to help maintain some beautiful smoothness. The interface is a real problem. With a game where one misclick can spell complete disaster, having the UI be choppy is a bit unforgivable. Frequently the camera pans around to where it isn't wanted, and sometimes abilities just flat out don't seem to want to work. The camera also seems to be worse than the original. I've had frequent moments where I've been unable to see inside buildings I'm moving into, and just had to navigate while staring at a rooftop. The biggest offender is the Avenger, your strategic hub. Navigating through it feels clunky and slow, with load times where there shouldn't be any. The result is a game that doesn't feel slick, and getting everything you want done before heading out on a mission is harder than it should be. Knowing that this game was delayed, part of me suspects the final polishing steps were missed to get it out the door. Keep your eyes open for patches or even UI overhauls through mods. I get the feeling, much like Skyrim, it'll start to have some standard mods to pick up in the future. On the bright side, the core gameplay is, frankly, exactly what I'd wanted. The game does a fantastic job of making you feel like a plucky underdog and applies heaps of pressure. The difficulty is also rock solid, with missions turning on a dime into disasters at a single misstep, or just sometimes due to the winds of fate. This isn't a game for people who hate being at the mercy of RNG. To be a massive nerd and quote Picard, it is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not weakness, that is life. But it's the desperate struggles, the fighting back from adversity, that makes the game really shine. That moment when you need your sniper to land that single shot, or, well, let me share one of my favourite war stories. I'll be vague on the details to avoid spoilers, but things had taken a turn for the worse. 2 soldiers were unconscious and 2 were dead. My only remaining soldier was a certain Jack Morrison, who had ended up a pistol-slinging sniper. And he had a problem. He was being chased through the map by a gigantic monster made of ooze that wanted to cut him in half with some pointy claws. His pistol did about 3 damage a shot, and this thing healed for 2 health per turn. Unless he ran, he'd take 4 a turn. It doesn't take a genius to work out those grim mathematics. So instead I spotted something in the distance, an old forgotten petrol station, and so I made Jack Morrison run for it, luring the monster near the rusted out petrol pump, and then dashed away and lobbed a grenade back. It exploded, the car next to it exploded, and the monster went up in flames. Soldier 76 annihilated the alien freak in fire and fury, and the mission was won. And that, to me, is a moment of pure joy that can only be found in XCOM. I want to spend a moment to linger on one of my favourite new features as well, the ability to heavily custom my soldiers. In the original, you are somewhat lumped with what you got. Here you can change everything and anything. If you want XCOM to be a pack of Valkyrie warrior women from Germany, go for it. If you want to make your friends, do it. The customization options are impressive to say the least, although I was somewhat disappointed to see that although there's a huge wealth of options for European languages and even regional accents, including a boisterous Brit and a lethal sounding Scottish woman, there's no Russian, Chinese or Japanese options, a minor niggle, but I would have liked it all the same. The final thing I want to address is a shift in focus. While XCOM 1 had its narrative, it was incredibly bare bones. You had to capture a crystal, assault a base, and then capture an ethereal and assault the temple ship, with some small steps in between. This game places more of an emphasis on the narrative. As XCOM is smaller and more of a surgical instrument than before, this works nicely from what I've played so far. While you still have a lot of random missions to indulge in, the story beats come thick and fast and give you a framework to play with while peeling back mysteries. It's good times. Personally, I'd be happy to give my recommendation, but keep in mind if you have a lower end rig, you might find the game choking in places. If you're on the fence due to optimization, then there's no harm in holding off and seeing what patches come down the line or what the modding community manages. If you're on the fence due to being scared off by things like turn timers, I'd say give the game a try. If you can't stand them, removing them is as easy as downloading a single file, and that, to me, is the real beauty of this game. It's XCOM you can tweak and remake to your own tastes. Who could ask for more? Well, I could, I guess, in that the UI could work better, but, you know. Thanks for watching to the end. I've been Josh as one voice amongst many, and I hope you enjoyed my initial thoughts on XCOM 2. I might have held off a little longer in doing this, but I think the coming days will be rather busy for me. Any thoughts you have about the game or about the review itself, post them up. I'd love to know what you think. Toodles.